that's what makes it fun, right? It's certainly the deck to look for coming off of the ban of Violent Outbursts, and that's why both Reid and Carmen are showing it off this week.
Absolutely. You're definitely more into the merfolk than the orc archers, huh?
Well, yeah, look, this is what I say about, and we'll see as this match plays out, both players slamming their creatures to get going, and we'll see if the clock, we kind of got close on clock. We'll see if clock becomes a thing here. But what I say is that these Abzan, these Golgari creature combo decks, they basically, the cards change, but the decks stay the same year to year.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no kitchen finks anymore. There's none of that, but no Moliras. But at the end of the day, it's sort of the same thing. If they accumulate a couple of small green creatures, you're going to lose.
Exactly. The more Magic stays the same, or the more Magic changes,
Yeah.
the more it stays the same. With Reid Duke playing Overgrown Tombs here, I think that really means that the world's healing and the modern metagame can only be in a great place. So
Yeah,
catching
absolutely.
up to the game,
Yeah,
catching up to the game, we got two Delighted Halflings as well as Wall of Roots to start. So Reid's definitely just trying to set up one of these Baumasters. And then just Baumasters and Soul Cauldron so far from Carmen. Who do you like more so far here, Corbin?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. This double Bowmasters sort of standoff here, with the halflings, of course, having the two toughness. Uh, Cauldron is sort of the key card in the matchup, in terms of making, not this matchup necessarily, but one of the new additions to Yawgmoth that's made it so strong. Um, both players right now just really want to try to accumulate some sort of board presence to set up. I mean, the Grist versus the Soul Cauldron is sort of the only thing that makes each player's hand different.
Yeah.
Court of Calling, of course, for Carmen being an option later on, but going to run out the Soul Cauldron here, which the Wilds of Eldraine Artifact is combos with basically everything. You've run across it in Commander, you've seen it take over Modern now, and whether it becomes the top deck again remains to be seen, but it's certainly a good piece here to get the engine going for Carmen.
We even saw that in a combo deck in Standard, at
That's right.
at the World Championship here not too long ago. So yeah, the Soul Cauldron is making a lot of impact. And Corbin, I'm actually getting word as well from our producers that since it is my birthday, we're allowed to switch it to Orcish Baumeisters for the rest of the stream. Yeah, I don't make the rules. I just heard it in my ear here from our director. So that's now it going.
I know that you are. Look, I certainly appreciate the dad humor, and I know that you do these days as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, since I did, now have a daughter, I've gotten even more corny, and I don't think that was really possible. So, yeah, I think it's just an automatic shift. So.
Oh, we love it. We love it, Corey. It's great.
All right.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
I have.
Next thing you know, you'll be at soccer practice annoying all the other parents. It's perfect.
I'm gonna buy a van here actually after this. If I were to take down this season, I'm buying a minivan. So you heard it here first, Twitch chat. So both players are kind of staring at each other. It's been slightly apparent, at least definitely to us as we're watching this, but slightly apparent that both players might have Orcish Bowmasters, and it usually is the case where whoever blinks first in these scenarios loses the value as Orcish Bowmaster just pings the other one. Now, the layers start to get a lot more complicated when you have two Soul Cauldrons across the way, plus a creature in the yard. So this is going to be a crazy situation, and I have no idea how it's going to play out.
Yeah, this is one of those where we just sit back and watch and see how these two players deal with this. You know how, look, it was hard enough for me just to try to take all of the cards in your library and put them into your graveyard.
You got close. I'll tell you that.
Well, I did. But imagine trying to navigate your way through this.
Yeah, this is brutal. This is usually when I'm in the booth at the Pro Tour or something. I'm just like, all right, what kind of filler talk can I, say until they actually make a play and be like, of course Reid should do this because the play he just did. It helps not make me look as foolish, Corbin. Next level tips here.
straight from the best in the business. We love it. So you mentioned that it being about what players blink first. Well, Carmen now hits the fourth land, which means the double Bowmasters play is available. Reid is about to untap into his fourth land, but it looks like he's going to go ahead and pull the trigger here. Bowmasters number one.
I think it's tough to play around double Bowmaster right now from really either player, and Reid just wants to make sure he uses his mana and sets up for like a Quarter Calling off the top, something like that. But this is really interesting with the double Bowmasters, presumably going at the Delighted Halflings. Now, I love this timing from Carmen too, because if
Mhm.
Reid wants to fire off the other Bowmaster on the Delighted Halfling, well, there's still one trigger on the stack that you can then use the Soul Cauldron to pump it again. So, yeah,
Right.
this is going to be a strange scenario here.
Hey, yeah, I thought maybe Reed would wait till he had his own 4 mana for all the Bowmasters, but the fireworks start here at the end of Carmen's fourth turn. Reed's Bowmasters. It's the yard. It looks like that first one, and now
Yeah. And this is kind of a nightmare scenario here that I
mhm,
don't think Reid can really play around. Is now this second Bowmaster is going to come down and hit the halfling. You're already pretty priced in doing so. And then the second Bowmaster from Carmen can clean up the other Bowmasters. Now, that doesn't matter a ton in this matchup as,
mhm,
well, the players aren't drawing a lot of cards until you start doing the Yawgmoth things. But just getting that many pieces of cardboard off the table
right.
leaves Carmen with a huge advantage here.
Especially as this game becomes sort of weirdly grindy, right? As both
Yeah.
players exhaust each other's small creatures, neither player's just drawn any. I mean, they've drawn extremely powerful cards, but given that they both have them, nothing's a sort of a haymaker here. Carmen, of course, with that Court of Calling, and Reed's uh, parity breaker is the Grist, and that's what is going to be sort of the next domino to fall as they work their way through Soul Cauldron triggers and Bowmaster triggers. And when the dust clears, we're going to have Reed untapping and trying to make sense of what he's looking at.
Yeah, very, very true. So here we see Cauldron targeting the Bowmaster from Carmen first, then Reid retargeting it to make sure Carmen does not put a counter on a creature. But once the Soul Cauldron goes to target something else, then this Bowmaster
Right.
can get active and target something else. So a lot of complicated lines already in the start of this Yawgmoth match. Why did we draw the short straw here and are commentating this very difficult match, you know?
Well, I hear you, but on the other hand, we might have to play it. And based on my recent experiences, I would much rather be here. Being it down there in the proverbial feature match area is tough. These lights in my room, they're not that bright, but man, did that spotlight feel bright.
Well, I got bad news for you, Corbin. We are playing against Yawgmoth next round.
Oh
There's no
no.
ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is just which one of these great players we are individually playing.
True. I think it's like I said at in the open. We've played in some of these events before, and I think Carmen got me in the past.
Yeah.
I might have been with Infect if I remember right. So maybe that's where I'll end up. But all right, let's catch up here. Reed drew Wall of Roots for the turn. A truly exciting uh, rock type redraw here. And
The ultimate
what
redraw.
right? What does he want to do? Carmen with two Bowmasters in play. Reed 0 at the moment. Both Reed has the untapped cauldron. What is he even going to want to try to advance?
Yeah, so here's the thing. It's kind of brutal as we're going to have the wall come down. Maybe we have Grist come down, but even Grist coming down is a bit of a liability because if it ever goes to the graveyard, if Carmen's able to finish off the Grist and
Hmm.
then eat it with the Soul Cauldron, then all of her creatures are also Grist. So that is a huge, huge liability. So we might see one of these creatures go away with Grist or just make an insect to be a blocker. But the main turning point and the main thing that's hinging on this match right now is
Hmm.
that Quarter Calling turning into a Yawgmoth. I mean, it is the
Right.
namesake card in this matchup for a reason. The first person to get that down with no Bowmasters on the other side tends to be pretty advantaged here. So I'm still going to put advantage to Carmen, even though at this very moment, Reid is, doing a little bit more things.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Reed with the grist, but the grist is a nice value piece. The Court of Calling representing Yawgmoth is a nice game winning piece because that will start churning Carmen through the deck, pulling out if not combo pieces, then cards that just further this advantage, cement it with the Bowmasters,
Oh,
and of course the
okay.
Soul Cauldron.
Corbin, I hate to interrupt you here, but
Go
there is
ahead.
one line that's available here that would be so sick if Reid did it. Reid can sack a creature and destroy his own grist. If he were to do that with Cauldron tapped down, then Reid could eat the grist with the Cauldron, and then all the creatures would be grists at the moment.
Okay.
You do have to sacrifice some things here, but I don't know. I think that seems like a spicy little line
Well,
here from
if you're
Reid.
Reed and you have one overgrown tomb in hand and you're staring down double Bowmasters, you got to get creative, right?
Yeah, and I would think that if you sack the Delighted Halfling, kill the Grist, eat the Grist, then put a counter on the second Wall of Root that doesn't have one of those pluses on it, then you would be able. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
Reid.
Yeah, great job, Corey, nailing it, calling it out, and Reed making it happen. What a
Yes.
play. What a line to find.
Thank God Reid took his time on that because it takes me a solid, three
Yeah.
times the amount of time to find a line that it would take Reid. So he really made me look good by taking his time there. Appreciate
Well,
you, Reid.
there you go. So now try to explain to people what we're looking at, because this is just when it gets downright silly. Agatha's soul cauldron things. What is happening on Reed's side of the board
So Reid is all Reid's creatures are grists that have a +1/+1 counter on it. Now this does come with some liability. If Reid were to
right now?
accidentally mill a Yawgmoth into the yard, then
Yeah.
Carmen could eat the Yawgmoth and then have automatically Yawgmoth in play. So there was a bit of a risk, and kind of doesn't matter. Yawgmoth is already in play. So it's really going to be interesting here to see if the namesake card in this matchup, Yawgmoth, is able to take over, or if this grist, the Hunger Tide,
Mhm.
3x grist deck here from Reid is able to pull further ahead. So gonna be an
Well,
interesting game.
yeah, the natural draw here of Yawgmoth for Carmen probably opens things up. I mean, it's the mana that's the constraining issue here, regardless.
Yeah.
So the wall of
So
roots can come down to give you an extra body for the cord. It can be kind of neutral there. It's also a sacrifice fodder for the Yawgmoth.
mhm.
Alternatively, just playing Yawgmoth allows Carmen to start uh, having access to it, drawing, and kind of going from there. What's the and for everything Reed just had to look at on his turn? Carmen now trying to fight back with an almost even more complicated puzzle with all of these lines of it.
Yeah, it gets pretty complicated. So one of the other kind of nice cooking plays that Carmen can do here is
Hmm.
cook up a Delighted Halfling in the
Hmm.
yard. You put that on one of the counters on Baumeister. Now your Orc Army and Baumeister are Delighted Halflings as well. So you can then tap them for mana to then play Yogg,
Right.
or you can cord. And who knows? Carmen also has the play available of doing exactly what Reid just did. Looking like, hey, Reid, really cool play there. I'm going to get a grist too, and I'm going to kill it as well. And then put it under Soul Cauldron and, go from there.
There's no going from there. That's like
Yeah.
if that's when you
Oh,
just
this is a Haywire Might, probably.
mutually agree to pick them all up. All right, Haywire Might to remove the Soul Cauldron from Reed's side. That would make sense as a much less, a much more straightforward play that doesn't leave the board in just an absolute cluster that no one can work through. So Reed's Soul Cauldron down, Carmen's Soul Cauldron still up. Of course, Reed now has an additional set of tokens, but did this just swing back around to Carmen?
Definitely. I think that was a really nice play there because that does shut off the grist ability. You need Cauldron in play to do anything there. And now Carmen at any point can eat that Haywire Might and have that ability attached to all her creatures. So if there ever is another Soul Cauldron, they can
Hmm.
all be dealt with perpetually here. That really allows all these Silver Bullet style cards to just be really strong. But Carmen sees no reason in doing that, decides to just eat the Halfling first, and now with Halfling and Cutthroat and no Bowmasters on the other side, no cards in Reed's
Yep.
hand, I think this is pretty much just wrapped up in favor of Carmen, and just a really well played game from both players that I'm not envious of either of them for having to play, because this was
That's right. That's
this was
exactly right.
difficult on the brain for sure.
And this was game one, Corey.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, really
All right.
interesting for
Well,
these Yawgmoth mirror matches. This isn't a deck that I've played a ton of. Just like you, I've watched a ton of Yawgmoth. It's not necessarily my favorite deck to play, but you know, I love Modern. I play so much of it that I play against it all the time. So I definitely know kind of how it operates. But these kind of mirror match situations, I never run into when I'm personally playing.
Oh, and Carmen, on the other hand, we know Reid is always adept and on point with the overgrown tomb decks. Carmen taking game one there has been grinding this deck for the last few weeks. She said so. Picks up game one, moving to the sideboard, and instantly starts slamming in. Looks like 11 cards over there. That's one who has a plan.
Yeah, you know both these players. You know, kind of every one of us when we see what we're playing against, kind of looks in, okay, how would I sideboard here? How would I be prepared? Because you know, you don't get to play Reid Duke that often, you know, especially most of the time he's at the top table of Pro Tours. So if you're not at the top table of Pro Tours,
Yes.
you're probably not playing Reid that often. So
Right.
it's always fun to test your skills against the best players. So you know, Carmen would like to win this, and as would Reid.
Well, things getting off to a good start for Carmen. Boarding the cards in looked like the easy part here. Boarding the ones out, maybe a little bit more of a check.
Ain't that always the truth with every single game? I feel it's always easy. Like, oh yeah, this card looks great. This looks great. And be like, oh wait, I cannot take out this many cards. That is fair.
Yeah, especially and you know this deck has some flexibility, but when you're playing a combo deck in particular, you don't want to dilute your own deck too much with cards that maybe are great in a matchup, but if you draw three of them, they don't work out.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, leaving these one ofs in here makes a lot of sense. You know, you have quarter calling
Mhm.
targets. And we see the one of Ballista here on the left side. I think the left side is Reid. I could be wrong though. So having that kind of combination with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, where on the right side we don't see Ballista at all in the 75. I've kind of agreed with not having Ballista these
Mhm.
days. It just felt like it was really cool, really cute right away, but maybe not necessarily super needed.
Well,
The
especially
one
if everyone's targeting the deck, right?
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I'm kind of shocked about is all these ignoble hierarchs staying in on the right. Okay, yeah. So the right is Reid because Carmen was not playing ignoble. I
Oh,
think
okay.
Reid is just kind of thinking, wow, Baumeister is not that good in the mirror match. Like we saw it be pretty good that game, but it's a card that, you know, we see Reid taking out. Maybe Reid is assuming Carmen's taking them out as well and then leaving in the hierarchs. That could definitely backfire as when you get your ignoble hierarch Bowmastered, it feels really bad.
Yeah, that is sort of the line of demarcation in modern these days is one toughness creatures. Very few of them make the cut uh, because of Rin and Six, but particularly Orchid.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
you mentioned it. That's a double ignoble hierarch start over there from Reid. Not sure if he'll keep this or not with just the basic forest, but Carmen looking at a much more, honestly, a very solid hand with a lot of the cards
Yeah.
that she's going to want.
Very good. You know, Reid can play with ignoble hierarchs when he's on the play, which he is down a game. You know, you at least get that one free turn where your ignoble hierarch
Right.
is going to produce ideally 3 mana on turn 2. But yeah, it looks like Reid was already on a mulligan, so I think you have to keep this,
Hmm.
but definitely not ideal for Reid. And we'll see if Carmen goes for the classic fatal push here into
Yeah.
Bowmaster, the second one. Like you got to put her so far ahead, but you know, there's some thought in getting the value with your Bowmaster here and not killing this ignoble hierarch, which Carmen decides to do, and slightly backfire. I think if she had perfect information, would fatal push this one and then Bowmaster the second one, but still things looking very good for Carmen.
Yeah, not it changes a little, not a ton. It looks like the damage is going to be the difference. Reed chooses to actually just keep it open for a chord ability, it looks like. So now Carmen pulls the trigger on the fatal push on Reed's end step, and it looks like he's thinking about cording for one here. Or can
Porting for only 0, right? Because I
zero
think that
because
Wall of
yeah.
Roots is already, yeah, so it's just the land, Dryad Arbor, I would imagine.
Hey, that's a lot of one toughness out there, that's for sure.
Just Bowmaster licking its lips like, yes. Put me in, coach.
This is turn 2. Okay, this is turn 2.
Yeah.
Baumeister's hits the battlefield, takes down one of the hierarchs, and
Hey.
crucially, that actually cuts Reid off a second black
Oh,
source, but
second
nurturing.
black.
Yep, there you
Oh,
go. Peatland off the top allows
yep.
Reid to stay in the game at least, so he'll be able to deploy the Yawgmoth, be able to fodder his own creatures away, which was huge. If Reid didn't hit that black, if he just hits another green card or something that doesn't really do much here, this game might have just been over.
Yeah, 100%. That was the draw Reid absolutely needed to just be playing Magic. Otherwise, we were done. So now one thing that Reid has available is tap everything but Pendelhaven. Then you play Yawgmoth. Then you can sack Ignoble Hierarch, targeting Baumeister.
Mhm.
Bowmaster will still trigger. So assuming that one trigger would go at Dryad Arbor, then you can Pendelhaven to save it. And then you look at a board state of Carmen having a 2/2 army and Reid having Yawgmoth, one card in hand, a Dryad Arbor that's tapped, and the Yawgmoth itself with a couple of lands.
Yeah.
That looks a lot better than the options that he had looking at the opening hands.
That's right. It looked very, very like Carmen had a great opening hand, but Reid was able to just kind of turbo it out. And look, that extra mana from that fatal push on turn 1 might have come up.
Yeah.
I almost certainly would have gone for the Bowmaster line as well. But Reid able to find a way through it. Now we'll see what he does here. If the Pendelhaven ends up being relevant, and that of course is what he does. That's huge. This is keeps a creature around for future activations, more bodies. Very nice to get the extra value there out of that land.
Totally agree. We'll see if Carmen even bothers aiming at the Dryad. Still does it just to tap out the Pendelhaven. That's pretty smart because if Carmen does top deck another
Mhm.
Bowmaster, you have the clean way to kill it.
Right.
Or yeah, I guess you can only cord for one, so that's not anything too special. So as it stands, Carmen would really like to draw something as she does not have a great play right now.
So I don't know what happened there, but Dryad Arbor did hit the bin.
Okay, so what happened there was the damage that was pointed at Dryad Arbor. Yawgmoth sacrificed the land to then deal damage to the Orc army, and
Hmm.
that countered the ability of Orcish Bowmaster. So Carmen does not get an extra army. So
Hmm.
that is just Reid valuing an extra card more than the land being on the battlefield. And the exchange would be Carmen would also have a 2/2 army. So yeah, nice exchange there for Reid.
Yeah, very well explained. And he needed those cards because he didn't have much in hand. And now he's got a duplicate Yawgmoth and a Court of Calling that can fire off for X equals 2. And so not a lot cooking for Reid right now, though, of course, with Yawgmoth in play, things can get out of control pretty quickly. Carmen, plenty of cards, but no board presence right now. Soul Cauldron coming off the top, a Yawgmoth of her own, double Quarter Calling. Not a ton to do here. Just plays out her own Yawgmoth.
Yep.
So Reid's gonna have a lot of options available to him here. We'll see if he wants to hoard on the end step. It certainly seems that way. Could
Yep.
always crack the peatland if he needs a card later.
Do have Yawgmoths looking at each other, and they do have protections from humans. So there's no, physician fighting going on between these two. There will just have to find another answer to deal with opposing Yogs. But cord for one here, maybe getting Yawgmoth. And then maybe if Reid can find another Yawgmoth, another undying creature, we could just be all done here. That's a
Yeah,
wrong
that's right.
one drop, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, not well. It will. I would say if it's going to hang out in Reed's hand for a while, it may eventually answer a Soul Cauldron, but not the one you
Yeah.
want to draw off the top when you have your opponent tapped out, Yawgmoth and Young Wolf in play. So uh,
One thing
Reed,
Haymire
yeah, go
might
ahead.
does do if Reid wants to right now is just cash it in for 2 more cards as you sack the
Hmm.
Haywire might target the Young Wolf, sack the Young Wolf again, and then each creature kind of gets to do that as well. So, Reid's going off.
Yeah, drawn cards here. Halfling, the first one. Surveil land coming off the top next. Those have been a really nice pickup for a lot of modern decks. I'm not sure how much they talked about it in the first match, but your Goryo's deck, you could just surveil card to the graveyard and immediately reanimate it. Pretty
It
sweet.
was the first match I played with the deck, Corbin, and I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I want to check this deck out. It won some things. I was like, I've never liked this style of deck in the past, but I'm like, oh, I'll try it. And the absolute first game, I crack a Surveil land, I put Gristlebrand into the yard. Turn 2, I attack and I draw 14 cards, and I'm like, huh, these Surveil lands seem to be pretty good in this Goryo's Vengeance deck.
Not bad.
And yeah, they're incredible in that deck. They were incredible in Rhinos before the Outburst ban, and then they're very good as a 1 of or 2 of in these Yawgmoth decks as well. So yeah, huge fan of the Surveil lands.
Well, at the end of all of that, Reid puts his Surveil land into play. His hand now land that second Yawgmoth, a Baumeister's that he has up. We'll see how that interacts. Scavenging Ooze for Carmen, though, this, at least with 3 mana open, has the ability to interact with Reid's graveyard. We'll see if Reid does any Young Wolf shenanigans in response here. May not be able to do too much, but Reid thinking it over with the Scavenging Ooze on the stack.
Yeah, this is interesting because if Reid were to, let's say the Ooze comes into play, then you try to Bowmaster it and then sack the Young Wolf, like with it in the graveyard, Scavenging Ooze can eat it. Now, Scavenging Ooze is also just going to be large here. It represents being a 5/5. So there's really no killing it right now without something like, cue the Grist being drawn right there.
Perfect
as
timing.
That's going to be an incredible draw here. And let's see, Reid might actually have the ability to threaten taking down this Yawgmoth right now. With that attack.
Good call there. The Grist will be helpful later. The Orcish Bowmasters is helpful right now.
The 1-of that Reid left in, Corbin. The 1-of, no big deal.
No big deal. Didn't even need to cord for it. You just draw it. Yeah. Look, also drew the Haywire Might. So sometimes you draw the perfect ones, and sometimes you draw just the okay ones. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
this one works out pretty well.
Deck. Yeah.
But it looks like so Reid puts Bowmasters in play. Looks like is has the ability to make that big block on Yawgmoth you mentioned if he wants. Carmen not going to let things get quite that far. It looks like thinking about firing off a Court of Calling.
Yeah, or just eating something with Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, these are always the really weird scenarios because now, if all 3 of these creatures go to block Yawgmoth, just that trade itself is really bad for Carmen. Yeah. Carmen could sack the Ooze to sack to hit one of the other creatures, but then if you target one of the other creatures, then Reid can sack said creature and put a counter on Scavenging Ooze or something. But Reid only goes to just chump block and put a counter on this. So a more relaxed play.
Yeah, look, Reid's got an extra Yawgmoth in hand, but that Grist that he's about to untap into with the Bowmasters up is, I think, what's really driving his confidence here. And I don't know how exactly a second Grist comes into the picture, but it seems like Reid has an abundance of options at the moment. You can use that Grist to start interacting with Carmen's board. Carmen, just with the Scavenging Ooze activations available now. So both of those Court of Callings, at least for the moment, very dead in hand. So Reid has sort of free reign to take over this game and slam the door shut.
Absolutely. This is definitely Reid's game at this point. And I want to go back to that Nurtured Peatland off the top. Without that to turn on Yawgmoth and then cord into Young Wolf to draw like 7 cards, Reid was all but, heading to the bottom bracket here already. So really nice draw there from Reid and just shows the explosiveness of this Yawgmoth deck. Like, yeah, of course, Reid's looking great right now, but a series of draws here from Carmen can really flip the tables like Reid's done to Carmen here.
All right, looks like Reid's first line of action here is to sacrifice a creature to Grist, pointed at the Yawgmoth, as expected. Yawgmoth hits the bin, and Reid just very comfortably passes the turn. And Carmen now has quite the board to answer. Just leaning on that Scavenging Ooze, you mentioned it. It's growing to a 5/5. It can pressure attacks, and with it out there, the Young Wolf is a little less impressive as a free chump block.
Still not too impressive of an attack. The one thing, like you were saying, that Carmen has going is, well, if Scavenging Ooze or if Young Wolf gets into combat, the Young Wolf will just get eaten by the Scavenging Ooze here. But I think more than likely, if Reid's able to untap with a relatively not too scary of a battlefield from Carmen, Reid's just able to tick up Grist, play second Grist, sack a creature, kill Scavenging Ooze. That'd be pretty solid for Reid.
Yeah, and he just puts the wall of roots in the way of the Skoos. Sacrifices it to Yawgmoth for some value along the way. Yeah, that the Yawgmoth that Reid was able to deploy is just completely taken over the game, and Carmen's was not able to hit the battlefield with any friends in play. I mean, this shows the power. This is why you run the ignoble hierarchs, right? They've all
Yeah.
been in the dust by now, but they did what they needed to do, which was accelerate Reid with enough fodder to that 4 mana for Yawgmoth to turn the game on its head.
Yeah, I think Reid had a turn 3 Yawgmoth through a Fatal Push and a Baumeister killing an Ignoble Hierarch. You know, I mean, it was all the cards in Reid's hand, you know, that allowed him to do such a thing, but still, that's not easy to do.
All right, Carmen going to try to go. Carmen's going to try to work her way back in here. Fires off Court of Calling.
Yeah, Cord for 2. I mean, you could get like a Baumeister and kill down Grist. That's not great. There's Hapatra. Yeah, goes for the Orcish Baumeister, and it's a fine play, but nothing too special. Leaves up the 1 mana to be able to eat the Yawgmoth. But this combination of Delighted Halfling into Grist, sack the Delighted Halfling, is going to be really, really strong at dealing with Scavenging Ooze, and then kind of a House of Cards scenario. When Yawgmoth is unlocked, we've seen how powerful it would be. But Reid just says, you know what? I don't even need to deal with that Scavenging Ooze yet. Just make some insects. I'm surprised by that, to be honest. Scavenging Ooze seems like
leaving the Scavenging Ooze up
a bit. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not a Yawg gamer here. This all looks difficult. That's for sure.
Yeah, I guess if Reid decides that the Young Wolf, tricks are less important right now than just grinding out sort of quote unquote normal value with the Yawgmoth, maybe he just plans to just let the Scavenging Ooze get as big as it wants and then just chump block it and get there a different way. But Carmen's starting to cook a little bit now, though. Soul Cauldron in hand, Young Wolf in hand, Court of Calling in hand. That's some pieces.
Yeah, let her cook here, because this is about to be something here, because there is no way to stop this Agatha's Soul Cauldron from eating either Grist or Yawgmoth. And the thing is, with yeah, I guess there is a way to technically stop it, I guess, is if whatever creature Agatha's Soul Cauldron targets, you then can remove that. But if the Soul Cauldron, eats up Yawgmoth and targets Scavenging Ooze, I don't think Reid has the ability to give it enough negatives to deal with that. So I think that's just like a straightaway answer. Plus, Carmen also has the ability to go Young Wolf, Court of Calling for Yawg, and then Agatha's Soul Cauldron, eat Grist, and then get both kind of combos going. So yeah, actually, just as I was saying, it looks like Reid's game to lose. I think it's completely flipped already 2 turns later, where Carmen's looking pretty solid here.
Well, yeah, Reid took control of the board, got out ahead on mana because of it, but couldn't turn the corner into a combo, right? And
yeah,
Carmen had those Court of Callings in hand, had the Soul Cauldron, had the powerful cards, just needed time to deploy them. Received it because once Reid had control of things, well, he couldn't actually attack for any damage in the game, and he didn't piece together the combo yet. So
yeah,
that gave Carmen a window to get back in, and now the court is up, Soul Cauldron's up, Young Wolf is up. That is a lot of options and a lot to think about right here. And it begins with a Soul Cauldron activation targeting. Can't tell what that is.
That's a Yawg. Yep.
Hitting the Yawgmoth. So here we go. Carmen going for it.
And now, like, once this Yawgmoth gets eaten by the Soul Cauldron, you don't have to actually let the other ability resolve. Like, automatically, Scavenging Ooze and Orc Army have Yawg's ability before you even target. So that is on temporarily as long as Soul Cauldron stays alive.
Yeah.
I think Carmen is just really piecing together, okay, what if you have a Court of Calling right now for 1? Something like that. But we see the Haywire Might in the yard already for Reid, so not too much that he can have. So it's interesting.
Yeah, we talked about it when he drew it. It kind of worked out, but not having access to it in this moment, not that he would have been able to pull it immediately anyway. But this is Carmen knows that the coast is clear to really go for whatever she wants to go for on this turn, whether that is, sort of a fair line or trying to piece together something a little more powerful combo-y. But first step looks like right now is Reid is just forced to watch all of this goes down as Carmen decides exactly how to pull off this cord, and then the Yawgmoth on Reid's side is his only form of interaction.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear from Reid about that decision to not deal with Scavenging Ooze. I don't know necessarily if it was for sure better or not, but that seems like an alternate way here to attack the battlefield. And whenever I'm playing against Yawg, I think my MO is just remove pieces of cardboard from my opponent. If I ever have a chance to kill something, I usually do. Just because these kind of scenarios when my opponent can play something and have the ability to cord for any creature in her deck, it just scares me so much. That being said, Reid would not have the halfling in play, would not have the insect that just got sacked. So there would be a disadvantage from Reid's sides as well. But I would love to pick his brain on that specific play.
Well, we got more matches to come today. I think you'll get that opportunity.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
You and I are going to be taking on one of these players at least, and that's where things will go here in the MTGO Masters.
Well, while we're talking about that and while we're thinking, how do you like your Yawg match from Dimir Mill? I think everybody, including me, put you on Merfolk, and you decided to go with Crab Tribal instead. So how do you like that matchup?
Well, I think if I can mill their important cards, it'll be very good, because that's the thing. We're talking about a quarter calling deck, a lot of one-ofs. If I can hit some of the key cards with the mill, that's pretty good. Natasha's Hideous Laughter might not be the worst thing in the here. I don't know.
That card's not so good against me. I have so many 8 mana and 7 mana spells.
Well, that's what I remember when that card came out and it entered mill. It used to just mill 20, 30 cards from people. It's nearly unplayable in the archetype.
Which is wild. But yeah, I was, playing decks like Jeskai Breach all the time where, I think if you added together my mana value in my entire deck, it was like, 32 or something. So that card used to just be like, I see it across from the way and I'm like, well, that's game. Let's head to the next one. But,
nothing is cast for what it costs these days.
Yeah. Not
including several of these cards in play right now when they just Undying back. Because
look at this stack, Corbin.
Yeah, it's all beginning right now. Carmen starts this off. Reid responds. As the dust settles here, Reid picks up a card. The Baumeister trigger goes down. The Soul Cauldron is going to still activate the Yawgmoth. And there is a Scavenging Ooze, a Young Wolf left on Carmen's side. Still the Grist, Yawgmoth, and Halfling on Reid's side. So that is where things stand after both players sort of work their way through some graveyard stack trigger shenanigans. And now we're left back in Carmen's main phase, trying to see what she wants to do from here.
Yeah, that was a wild turn, that's for sure. Just so much going on. And now that Scavenging Ooze also has the text of Yawgmoth. So, one thing that Carmen can do is sack Young Wolf, target the Delighted Halfling, Undying, bring it back, sack it, target Halfling again, and then tack with Scavenging Ooze to the Grist. But in the meantime, the Delighted Halfling would shrink the Scavenging Ooze by 1.
Right.
Just so many things here that are possible. See what they decide. Yeah. Interesting to not kill the Delighted Halfling and just allow it to block here, but maybe the play I was describing wouldn't work out that well.
All right, Reid gets the chump, draws a second Soul Cauldron of his own. So as it stands, though, it looks like this turn is going to end with Carmen with powerful cards in play, but now it's her turn to be tapped out, or at least mostly tapped out. And it's on Reid who's going to untap with access to Soul Cauldron. That was sort of the card that turned things around a little bit there for Carmen. But Reid now with all kinds of options and an active Grist.
Yeah, I feel like this mirror match here, at least what we've seen so far, is like, Carmen and Reid are at the skate park together, and they're like, all right, now check out my trick, okay? And then after be like, wow, that was sick. All right, but check this out. Now I'm going to try this kickflip and grind down the rail. I'm not a skater, so I'm probably getting all these references wrong.
If it comes from Tony Hawk, you're good. That's all. It's my only frame of reference.
Same. Yeah, absolutely. I lived and breathed that game when I was a kid for sure. 90s babies, I guess, huh?
Oh yeah, it was a while. It was amazing. It was amazing. So, but you're right. That is essentially what's happening here. Carbon's like, look at all these tricks I can do. Reed's like, look at what I can do. I'll kill my own grist.
That was sweet. Yeah. But now, I mean, Reid's stepping in the kitchen now as well with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, cooking up a brew. And wow, Carmen has seen enough. One Agatha's Soul Cauldron
scoop right there.
Yeah, easily could have been, to be honest. Like, it did look like Reid was going to be advantaged, but every time I think, one of the players is advantaged, the other player takes a turn, and you're like, oh, well, I guess they're good.
Well, that's what this grist deck, for a deck full of small creatures, is sort of wildly interactive, between grist and the Baumasters and Yawgmoth itself, of course. And then, the actual pieces of interaction between the might and the pulse and the fatal push.
Corbin, do you see this little pivot here? I want to bring some attention to this. This is nice. So now that Reid's on the draw, cuts all the ignoble hierarchs and brings the Baumasters back in. Carmen doesn't take out the Baumasters. So now Carmen's Baumasters are not that good because there's not that many good targets, but Reid's deck simultaneously is less explosive. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, very good call, because that, of course, with play draw makes a huge difference. And that was key to the last game. That Reid was able to pull out. In addition to everything else, he had to have it work out. He was able to use that opening hand to sculpt a position where he was able to top deck that, or that second black source he needed to deploy Yawgmoth and turn things around. And now he's going to try to switch things up. So Carmen has that Baumasters. Reid, though, no 1 toughness targets this time around, except, of course, his own Baumasters.
Yeah, another mulligan there from Reid, but a functional hand for sure. Needs some good things to happen.
Like that.
That is good. Draw lands first, draw your haymakers second is definitely the key to making Yawgmoth work, or really any mid-range deck.
Yeah.
That is the full hand here from Carmen. Gets a couple of the youngest wolves.
Wolf aggro.
Definitely not what I feel like here on my 33rd birthday. I feel more like an elder wolf. And a couple Baumasters, a couple fatal pushes. You got to like Reid's position here against most of the cards that Carmen could play, except one card, the Grist, which is going to be excellent here for Carmen. Just being able to play it, tick up, and block things. It's going to be great. We'll see if she wants to go for that. There's also a line of just being a little bit more defensive and protecting your Grist by just going land, go, Baumeister, your Baumeister, and then Grist after that. That's pretty tempting in the face of this battlefield. But that being said, Grist really can't die at this point when you have 2 young wolves available. So a close call for sure.
Yeah, it looks like she does go with the first line you suggested there. I mean, you said it. In sideboarding, your MO against Yawgmoth is just kill something when you can. That is what Carmen does in the mirror here. Uses her own Baumasters to take down Reid's, keeps those Grists in hand, and now plenty of creatures in play to go as fodder for that Grist. Although now Reid, the Bowmaster, the circle of Baumasters begins. You mentioned that whoever blinks first tends to lose. Well, currently it's Reid with Baumasters in play, and Carmen with Baumasters in hand if she wants to go that route.
See if Reid wants to get aggressive here and eat something with the Cauldron right away. Decides not to, and oh yeah, look at that card. Maelstrom Prolls straight out of 1999 here to deal with that. I get the Soul Cauldron. You gotta love it here.
Classic Jundum out and rock cards, right? Just pure rock deck right there. Maelstrom Pulse on the Soul Cauldron.
I think Carmen just wanted to accomplish the ultimate bingo card check off list here to beat Reid Duke with Maelstrom Pulse, like the man who's probably cast more Maelstrom Pulse than anyone on the planet.
Good point.
That was a great draw as well here from Mr. Duke.
Well, it's going to be Grist on both sides now. Reid runs his out. A key thing to remember here, by the way, and this is just sort of a feature of the deck, is that Grist is actually uncounterable when it comes off of halfling, which is something to keep in mind that a lot of players might forget about when the Birds of Paradise taps.
Yeah, let's get real. I mean, Grist and Agatha's Soul Cauldron, I think, are just like the cards that judges like set in front and they're like, okay, we need to learn about this before this big event. And be like, there's going to be a lot of ways to get these cards wrong, as it's just a lot of stuff going on. Dothy Voidwalker, I'm looking at you as well. There's just these really complicated cards that can just do so many different things and don't really act in the traditional way that Magic cards.
Well, just imagine being a judge and someone calls you over to a high stakes match and you look at some kind of wild board and they go, okay, the first thing you need to understand is that every one of my creatures is a grist.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Get a lot of different dice. I saw someone in chat saying these Yawgmoths are all about spending your life saving on good dice to make sure you are good to go for this mirror match. Yeah.
Well, it looks like Reid is the one good to go right now. His grist has left the battlefield, but it left it a better place for him, as Carmen has just 2 creatures, one of which is a Dryad Arbor, to protect her own grist. Meanwhile, Reid is sitting on Fatal Push, a Baumeister's, and a small army of tokens to provide some pressure. So this is actually looking in a spot where Reid is slowly kind of gaining control of the board, even though nothing's really bigger than a grizzly bear. It's all the same. Looking like a strong position. Both players now ticked under 5 minutes on the clock. So I think we're going to see some real decisive plays out of this, and Reid begins it with an attack.
Yeah, interesting there. Reid had the ability to Fatal Push the Yawgmoth and then attack with just 2 tokens to deal with Grist. Reid just saying, hey, it's much more important for me to keep Fatal Push around for the possibility of a Yawgmoth or something like that. But with this second Grist coming down, Reid might regret that, as he, is kind of, it's a little tougher to attack down this Grist. But Baumeister coming down to deal with opposing Baumeister is a solid start here. And yeah, just when we think one player's ahead, the other player takes a turn.
Well, and that's the thing, when all these creatures are kind of so small and so interactive. But that's
oh my god,
that one is not a small grizzly bear. That one is a Yawgmoth transition, and that one is going to put things very solidly into Reid's favor.
PhD Duke here coming in with the physician here to start performing some operations here on Carmen's creatures, as this is just going to completely break this game wide open. And if Reid isn't able to close it out now, I think he has one true opponent here, and it's going to be the clock. We are playing, where the clocks are in force. So
I was going to say, I think he might be writing. He might be writing an obituary over there. It's the time of death is maybe, but no, Soul Cauldron back for Carmen here. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yes. I mean, this represents every creature turning into a Grist. That was a huge draw. Okay. Now, what can Reid do? Can Reid just eat every creature? Oh, it has the Scavenging Ooze, of course, to just eat it in response.
To eat the Grist. So that
okay.
That was probably the chance for Carmen here. Now, Dryad Arbor off the top, not exactly what Reid's looking for, but any creature's fodder for Yawgmoth. And still has that Fatal Push in hand to protect against anything. That was not the Scavenging Ooze coming down to answer the Cauldron here with the mana available was just huge for Reid there.
Now Reid's retiring his medical career and is going back to cooking here, as he can now eat the Grist and then get this all going. So now especially the clock was the only enemy, and that's Reid Duke picking it up in 3 amazing games here. Both players played extremely well. That was an extremely difficult match to navigate.